And I brought out my other personality.
Yeah.
I was really able to bring out the other personality, which is one of the things that saved me in the long run was I realized that whatever came out of me when I was drunk was still in there.
Yeah.
It's not something that wasn't possible. I just never figured out how to unlock it. And pride was always the hindrance. It was always this self-consciousness, this holding back, this stifling weight of burden, of fear you're going to say something stupid, or fear you're going to do something stupid, and people are going to remember this. So
Strong Dads wants to thank 4Speed on 50 for sponsoring today's show. If you like classic cars, great food, and a taste of Americana, you have to visit 4Speed on 50's Diner, located on Route 50 in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Stop in today for a meal and an experience you won't soon forget at 4Speed on 50's Diner. Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merle Hutchinson, and I'm excited today to introduce my longtime friend, challenger, and brother in Christ. He's a man I've trusted and shared the inner parts of my life with for actually quite a few years now. He is a man that is willing to listen and push back when he sees appropriate, and he's a man that continues to make me a better man. And for that reason, I'd like to introduce to you Carl Andry. Carl, thanks for joining us on Strong Dads.
Merle, it's an honor.
Well, so we have been going around, I don't know how many years now.
Over 25.
And
over 25.
Started with just going to the same church, and our wives worked together.
Yeah.
But just we started hitting some Bible studies together, and I don't know how many different Bible studies over the years that we did together. But I've always enjoyed being in Bible studies with you, because I know you don't like when I say this, but you're our deep thinker. I'm the guy who's dog paddling up to the surface.
I don't think you give yourself enough credit.
But you're the deep thinker. And so I always have just appreciated, there's a few people in my life that have made me not accept things at face value. And you're one of those guys. Like, well, just because you heard that or you saw it on TV or whatever, like, it's worth pushing back on.
Okay.
You know. So anyway, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, first of all, it's reciprocal. Merle, you're one of the best people I know, and I say that all the time.
And that is totally uncomfortable for me to hear that.
It is. You are, and I've told you that before, one of the greatest men I know. And it's just such an honor. And I know you'd asked me to do this before, and I look at you, and I've talked with you. I've been in a lot of groups, started a lot of groups, and had you in groups and done things with you. It's hard for me to originally to think how much I could bring to this. And I don't want to undersell this and have people say, well, let's turn off the thing now. But you just are such, and you are the same to me. You're the guy that I know will tell me what I need to hear. And that's a rare thing in the world. Some people are intimidated. Some people are just not caring. They don't really love you. They don't.
Right.
They're just. It's a superficial kind of thing. So, it's a reciprocal thing. I really appreciate that in my life.
Yeah.
For me, it's been a really strange journey. We're going to talk about a topic today that I think I'm somewhat of an expert in because I've manifested it in so many different ways in my life, and on some ways I think most people don't really consider. I'm 63 years old. I'm at a time in my life where I'm sort of in a transition. I'm somewhat semi-retired. I've got a lovely wife. I've got 2 kids, so a grandchild on the way soon. But it's been a rough road. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I don't talk about that. This is probably the first time in a public setting. 37 years without a drink, and that was a really tough thing to do. I'm a stepfather when I said 2 kids. And that was tough. Blended families are tough. 2 great kids, and we're so blessed that way. I am especially.
Can we just hang there for just a second? Because this is Strong Dads. And, I think most of the time in our mind, my brain thinks biological fathers. But you know our story, and guys out there listening, they know our story that we adopted kids.
Yeah.
And I know from the adoption fatherhood and the married into blended family, there's nothing harder when it comes, like being a father is got its challenges,
Sure.
but bringing it in when they're not necessarily yours at birth, it just comes with a totally different set of challenges. It doesn't make the kids good or bad. It doesn't make us good or bad. It just means like, wow, I didn't see this coming. I didn't see it coming. Yeah.
And we underplayed, and there's a lot of issues that when I look back that we would have done differently. And again, I am so blessed. The two are just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
I hear other people talk about when they step into the same role, the issues that the kids bring into it, and then they're dealing with that. I have two extraordinary stepchildren, and I can't say that enough. The son is a much better man than me, and our daughter is I just am amazed all the time. So, but it was it's probably of the things that I've overcome in my life, it was probably the most difficult because you're in such a weird territory. You've got kids who are trying to do their best. It's kind of sort of forced on them. So, yeah, excuse me, it was a tough run.
Yeah.
Made a lot of money in my 30s, lost it all. And so for 20 years we talked.
Sounds like a Dave Ramsey commercial right there.
That's how we ended up. That I've always heard, don't waste a pain.
Yeah.
So in sorting that out, my relationship to money and everything like that's where I started teaching Dave Ramsey's financial piece because I felt other people needed to learn what I had learned. So, it's and this is really going to seem strange. We're going to be talking. I don't know if we want to talk about the topic or mention what it's going to be.
How about let me thank our sponsors. I'll thank our sponsors, and then we'll get into the depth of this. So we want to thank Quality Auto Mart, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and 4Speed on 50 Diner. So we want to thank our sponsors because, one, they support our message. They support what we do, and that's important, especially in a day of they don't always know every topic we're going to talk about, and the idea that they're willing to put their name on something without the fear of being canceled or somebody kind of giving them a black eye. And so we want to thank our sponsors. We also want to thank all of our guys who are out there listening, and I should say ladies. We know that a lot of you are ladies out there. Not that you guys are ladies, but that's a different show.
Yeah.
But
timely.
But we want to thank you guys. And, here's kind of the deal. If you like what you hear, share the show. Most of the time, guys, when we do a topic, it's because of something that I have struggled with, or when Kyle struggled with, or Carl, I know if you were talking about some things that you've had a challenge with, there's somebody else. The teacher always said, if you got a question, ask it, because I promise you somebody else in the classroom has the same question, right? And so share these shows. Do us a favor, subscribe to the show. That's how we boost up our ability to be found through the search engine. So we appreciate that, guys, and we just ask for your continued support. So with that being said, why don't you can go ahead and get into our topic a little bit if you want.
Well, it's pride. I mean, that's going to be.
You had to go there. You're all about you.
It's all about me. And that's the whole deal. So, when I say I'm sort of an expert on there, it took me a long time to realize, and this is going to maybe sound a little bit surprising, because every time I tell people this, I was an extremely painfully shy individual. And
you've told me that before.
Painfully.
And I really like that part. I don't see that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I am not exaggerating. The family members could attest to it. It was a very. and I'm not going to get into a lot of that. A very difficult childhood in some ways. So shyness, it was debilitating. It really was. When I went out for sports, the irony was, I then became the snobbish jock, and I wasn't that at all. I had just flown under the radar before that, but then people kind of perceived that I was that way. So going into a room and talking with people and meeting new people, going to new events where I didn't know anybody, that was just like so painful. And it took a long time to realize that's the inverse side of pride.
Yeah.
And to see this absorption with self.
Yeah.
And this is going to be controversial. Pride is so shot through with everything. I look at it. There was a time in my life I was a bodybuilder, and I would walk by a mirror, and think I'd missed a workout and had put on 5 or 10 pounds and considered seriously throwing up.
Yeah.
So I think when we look at alcoholism, bulimia, and some of the other things, and I know that there's a lot of factors to that, but anytime we're absorbed with self, whether it be on one spectrum, or the arrogance, egotistical side, at which I've been also in my life. It just took a long time to see how shot through with pride life is.
Yeah. Well, we know that, my story of anxiety, being crippled with anxiety. I've shared it on this show many times. I get to work with men all the time. Anxieties, I don't have a plaque outside my door that says, come in here if you have anxiety and you're a male.
Red flashing light or something.
But it finds its way into my office a lot with the men. And just through my own walk in that and my experience with it, I know that it is buried under pride and the idea of the fear of making a mistake, a fear of not looking quite the way whatever my brain thinks it should look. And for me, I know it was always that public not living up to, not measuring up. And I've always been a basic pleaser in life. I've been a pleaser. And when I don't think I can please or I think I'm going to drop the ball on something, I just feel like, I got 1,000 pounds just hanging around my neck. And it hasn't gone away completely, right? Like you learn to manage it. Your wiring is a bit of what it is, but you got to learn, as Paul says, I've got a thorn in my side, and it's like, okay, well, this is this one thing I got to learn to manage. But I totally get you. Like we always think of pride with guys as that arrogant guy who's always, the loudmouth owning the room.
Striding through the room, egotistical.
Right, which is, but there's just the mirror image of that or the opposite of the guy who is scared of a shadow, so to speak. So anyway, I appreciate you just talking about the inverse of that.
Which, you and I've shared too. At the height of my drinking, where I was coming to the end, which wasn't that protracted. I was very fortunate. I crashed and burned very early, but I had a terrible time with anxiety, and I call it the mannequin effect, where I would just lock up. I'd start across the room, and all that was rooted in this thing in your mind, the machine.
Right.
It's just going constantly about self, and it was that's pride on steroids, kind of thing. And I don't know if that's your reality when you would get into that, but you'd have this, you just couldn't shut the mind down.
Yeah. Now, that was my reality. Like, I never per se would have considered myself an alcoholic. I never struggled to that level. I drank a lot in my my teens, all through my teens, but into the early 20s. But it was my lubricant before every social encounter.
Right.
If we were going somewhere, I wanted to have at least 2 in me, 2 beers. And really, once I did that, it really made the party for me. Like I could then go up and talk to anyone. And I think because of that, it was like, it just felt right. It felt good. It felt normal to not have that intensity of anxiety. And so I never at that time thought I have an anxiety problem and there should be a better way to deal with it. I just said, we're going to party. Well, I'll pick up a 6-pack on the way and drink and drive to the party.
Right.
So.
Well, let me touch on something there, because I think it's all related. My addiction really started on grad night at Kings Island. And that was the first time in my life that I had enough alcohol to drink with total abandon. So, and then I remember it was a quart of Black Velvet whiskey. And a 6-pack of Miller. So I sat down, we got back from grad night, and I sat down in a hotel room, which was up by Kings Island, and I literally drank that quart of Black Velvet, chasing it with beer. Then got up and went in the other room, and somebody had some Southern Comfort, which I think is what made me sick. It wasn't the rest of it. Excuse me. But what ended up happening was I blacked out. And I don't remember any of that night. But when I went back for graduation, because it followed that, everybody talked about, oh, Carl, you were so funny. because I had backed up against the wall apparently, and then just entertained everybody.
Yeah.
And that was what I wanted to be. So the hook for me, I had a lot of anxiety anyway, but the hook right there was it unleashed something in me.
Yep.
And then I drank for that. To me, it was normal to drink half a fifth or half a quart before you got to the party.
Yeah.
But I needed that to bring that side of me out that was so locked up with anxiety. And
that was me. Now I could never drink that much, and I never could drink hard stuff, but I would drink the beer. And usually once I got into the 8, 9, 10, 11 beers, then I'd lose my ability to function well.
Yeah.
And so
then you crossed over into the idiot.
Yeah, then I was stupid Bill, right? And I'd lose energy. Like I'd be ready to go sleep somewhere. So I knew that my sweet spot was at 2 to 6 beers, and I could keep the party rolling.
Yeah.
And you're so right. Like I could, at least in my mind, feel like I was entertaining people.
Yeah.
Like I had them laughing. I was engaged, at least I thought, You're right. Like that was a big deal of feeling like, that was a fun party.
Yeah.
It was only because I felt that was my perspective of how people were responding to me.
And I brought out my other personality.
Yeah.
I was really able to bring out the other personality, which is one of the things that saved me in the long run was I realized that whatever came out of me when I was drunk was still in there.
Yeah.
It's not something that wasn't possible. I just never figured out how to unlock it. And pride was always the hindrance. It was always this self-consciousness, this holding back, this stifling weight of burden, of fear you're going to say something stupid, of fear you're going to do something stupid, and people are going to remember this. So it takes a lot of management. But on that, really, with alcoholism, and it's a topic that I'm really passionate about. People wonder, if you're out there and you wonder if you drink too much, that's a pretty good sign. If you're having difficulty in some area of your life consistently, that's a pretty good sign. Mm-hmm. But alcohol or sports cars or money or whatever it is that you're relying on to make you something, which is pride, is just, it's sand as a foundation. Mm. So if you ever, I just throw that out. If there's anybody that watches this and needs to talk, I'm always open. So.
Yeah, man, that's some just good stuff there, because I just think we're showing a different side of pride, and the one that really kind of eats at us. You mentioned the idea that that good thing is in us, whether we have the alcohol or not, it's in us, but how to untap it. So I've come to learn, and I could be all wet on this, but for myself, like I don't know exactly what made you afraid of failing, whether it was your dad's vision on you, and if you disappointed him. That was a little bit mine. But honestly, I think some of mine was allowing the world to define what was good, and that started in schools. I was a very average student, very average. I quickly realized that I didn't read as well as a lot of the kids. And so I was put in that group, I
was in remedial reading.
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah, and I'm a voracious reader today.
Yeah. I'm still an average reader.
Oh, yeah.
But it was that, just fear of being found out that you're dumb, you're not that smart, you're not as good as the next. On the other hand, I excelled at sports. I wasn't great, but I was probably at least average or better average. In reading and academics, I was on the low side of average. And so I avoided those things and would shudder at the idea of having to perform them. Yeah. Sports, now hear this, going to the game, I was a train wreck as a kid.
Till the first play.
Till the first play.
Yeah.
Seriously, like I can't tell you the number of times I would get sick on the way to a game. Yeah. My mom would be like, "Just get to the game, Earl. Don't get sick in the car. Don't get sick in the car." I'm trying, Mom. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. And once I'd get out there, start to warm up, and I was a catcher. I loved catching because I could be involved in every play. But Anticipation of, I'll say now, anticipation of blowing it all, making mistakes in front of everybody would just paralyze me. So what do you think in your now kind of, like, what was your fear factor, I guess, that drove you to the anxiety?
Well, first of all, to answer that question, I need to qualify it. I love my father. I loved him. He passed a year ago, January. I'm actually wearing one of his shirts. That's how I kind of wrap him around me today. But Dad, in his early years, was not so well-grounded. You're talking about sports. I was a catcher, and this is back in Little League, and I literally had fans. I kind of looked like Opie. I know we've talked about that before.
Guys, we're going to get a picture at some point in time. I mean, Ron Howard, Opie, like Ron Howard could not even pass for Ron Howard after we saw pictures.
Yeah, it was kind of a curse because you want to look like Clint Eastwood or Charles Bronson, or somebody like that. But here you look like Ron Howard. But I had fans. I was really good. And I say that now. It's hard for me it's always been hard for me to accept why things happen, why people saw things in me. You asked me that the other day, and I thought of other things that I just look back on. I go, what were people seeing in me, that I didn't see in myself? But Dad would get me in the car after a game, and by the time it was a short drive after the game, he would literally just wear me out about what all I did wrong. I love my dad again, but for most of my life, I felt I was a disappointment. I wasn't. Dad was quite different. He was not a Christian, even though he had been raised around that. And his advice to me about women, his advice to me about drinking or what it meant to be a man, later in years, he apologized at a very critical point. And all that happened in my life was my responsibility. But Dad very quickly summed up that, he had a role in that. And I love my dad. But he, things that I hope that no father out there ever does. This is from my perspective. That I think I told you there was a valedictorian. Why aren't you more like him? The subtle messages of, like, I'm going to put you on a hay wagon because he didn't feel I was strong enough or I was physical enough. I had terrible allergies. When I was a kid. I mean, debilitating allergies to where I lived on Contact, chlorotrimeton, whatever the drug of whatever that would help. So putting me on a hay wagon would have been like killing me, literally. Right. But that was the kinds of messages that I think went along. And on top of that, I don't want to get too far out in the weeds. There was a lot that went on in our house. I didn't realize for a long time. I didn't accept for a long time. PTSD. So back to the alcohol actually came along at a time and probably saved my life. It took some of that pressure off for a while.
Yeah.
But there was just this expectation. And then when you talk about school, I didn't get school. I thought you either had it. I remember looking at the valedictorian and when we were young, and his head was bigger in the back. This is how I'm thinking he's got more brain in there. That's how this happened. So, you're in school and there's this system that I didn't really fit into. I didn't get it. And nobody ever really, I didn't understand studying. I didn't have anybody, So schools of, remedial reading. And then once I realized what was in a book, once somebody spoke into my life, I couldn't read enough. It was nobody had ever, so the system, I don't want to hammer on school. That's a lot of factors though. To answer your question.
Yeah. I mean, I hammer on schools, and that's where I did my career. But I also think I hammer on them because of my school experience. That I always said that, at the elementary especially, in high school I got this a little bit, but not as much. At the elementary, here you have predominantly, I'll just say 99% of the teachers at the elementary are female, and they loved school.
Oh, yeah.
And so here they are teaching all of our boys.
Same pattern.
Yeah.
Same system.
Yeah. And so the boys, 50%, and I'm just going to throw that out, 50% of the boys wouldn't care if they ever walked into school again.
Probably.
Right, at the elementary age. Right? And here they are with people who don't get their misunderstanding, or I guess their view of school. Right. And, I always said, it's like, you're probably not going to get a lot of men to teach elementary, but that's a shame. because through me being like a male counselor, at first I thought that was really weird, but my boys were going to school there. So it was kind of like, hey, this is kind of low-hanging fruit for me from a dad perspective. But it didn't take me long to say, this is a great opportunity for being I'm just going to refer to myself then as a strong man in this void atmosphere of men to these boys.
Yeah, that's great.
And we could use so many. And now I do know some of these young men who are out there teaching in the elementary. And whenever I see one, I'm like, man, thank you.
Yeah.
These guys, these boys, all those kids need you, but these boys really need you.
They need a message.
Yeah.
They need that. They need that encouragement. They need that role model. And, I've done men's ministry a few times in my life. My big passion in that area is always trying to equip with you. It's fathers but men in general. I think they've just been, and we don't want to get too far out here. We're talking about pride, but how pride can get seeds, that the tendrils of it get into you at such an early age to where, you're so debilitated. I don't want to say that too many times, debilitated by this performance or, what's being said to you or what the environment's doing. I remember we had an English teacher in elementary that you had a score chart, if you raised your hand and asked a question and you used improper grammar, then your side got a point and there was a contest. So what do people do in that situation? I'm telling you what I did. I didn't ask a question, because if you ask a question...
So if you used improper, the other team got a point?
They got a point. So there was a competition going on. So if you got your team to lose, then you were, it was some weird... It's like, wait a minute, I'm here to learn English.
Yeah.
I don't know how to speak good English.
You're teaching me how to be afraid of it.
You're teaching me how to just ignore, just to, go under the surface, run, under the water. And
I ain't putting my hand up.
I'm not asking a question. I may not have a clue, but I'm definitely not going to ask a question. And you come out of there saying all the wrong things.
And as soon as you do, it's always a smart girl with the ponytail that says, "You're such an idiot.
Yeah.
Why did you say anything?"
I remember I was doing a spelling bee, and I was really good at spelling for some reason. And there was two of us, and Sarah, I won't say her last name. We were on the same team, and I missed the word. And I remember walking by her, and I looked at her. She said, "Dummy." I'm like, gosh, there's only two of us on this side. We've eliminated. It's like,
give me a break.
Give me a break. I mean, it's funny how stuff like that.
63 years old.
63
and this probably happened in third or fourth grade.
It was fourth or sixth grade. It was one of those two. I remember the class. I can remember the windows. I remember everything. Looking at her face, dummy.
Sarah, we're going to charge you for the rehab it's going to take to get Carl back on the trail.
Yeah. So now that you've heard about this, be looking out your windows. You never know. No, I didn't mean that really. But she's after she appeared on the milk carton, I forgot about it. I didn't have anything to do with that. But anyway, with this pride thing, when we talked about doing this, I was thinking we can't take on pride without talking about the ultimate source of it.
Yeah.
The fall. And I think personally that one of the things in the church that we don't do enough of is talk about the fall before the fall. And that's the ultimate source of all of our difficulties in this world. It's all the pain that we see, everything originated in the fall before the fall. Because without that, there wouldn't have been a fall of man, I don't believe. And we see the serpent, Satan, come down.
So just to be clear, I think I know where you're at there, but the fall before the fall was basically Satan's falling out of heaven, right?
Correct.
That's what you're saying there.
And the mechanism for that, I've always been fascinated, and I don't have the answer. I want to make this clear. We're going to get into doctrinal things. This is how I frame things, and maybe we ought to back up because I've looked at Barna Group and places like that. People don't believe that Satan actually exists.
Oh, yeah. No.
They believe that it's an archetype or a myth or something. I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to go into details. I personally know that there are demons in this world. I am fully sold out on it. It was part of my Christian walk. I didn't want to be a Christian, but I do know that there are demons, and I fully believe in an entity of Satan and that he is alive and well and that he stalks the earth looking for those he can devour. But his fall has always fascinated me. How in heaven, I tend to think it happened there, how does pride get into that environment? How did it get among one of the best? I mean, when we see how Satan is described before the fall, he is the deal. I mean,
Yeah.
he is of this grandeur that we can always. It's one of the great of the angels, and that's where this pride. If we're going to understand it, we can see the mechanism right there.
And I don't know how deep we're going to go. We're going to watch our time a little bit today,
Yeah.
just for the sake of, because like you said, we've got several shows.
We could,
and just
I think.
how we're going to roll some things out with our discussion. But I'm certainly not a theologian of any level or even close to a scholar, but I often wonder, like, the great dilemma that God had to say, I'm going to give them free will at the expense of them dying. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's a dilemma right there in itself.
Yeah.
Because I know the only way love can exist is through free will. But the only way that sin can exist is through free will.
Right.
And so like I don't quite wrap my head around to understand that. Like, I know we say that God desired relationship, and that's why to have relationship, you have to unleash the beast of love, right? You have to say, okay, and that's that free will. But at what cost, right? And so I don't understand that, but in saying that, I now with certainty, as you agree that, oh no, I've seen Satan at work. I know that the pride monster's there. We see it all the time, like, just a surface thing. When you watch somebody get baptized, you almost want to say, now, as soon as you get baptized,
Get ready.
go buy some insurance and stuff, because the next month is going to be miserable, right?
Right.
Because, and again, tongue in cheek there, but there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
We see a lot of that happen.
Well, as soon as you stick your hand up, you better get ready.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people who are trying to make a difference in the world legitimately without pride, truly in what they feel called to do by God, once you start doing that, you are a big target.
Yeah.
Satan doesn't really care about the average person who's just going about their business and doesn't really think about it. And that's a whole different show in itself. But I think, I think if Satan hadn't fallen, I don't know that free will would have, and this is my opinion, I think God could have been happy and man could have been happy communing with God in the garden forever in that type of relation. I think when we accept and live in grace, it's our attempt to get back into the garden, that state. It's as close as we get to that today. But I think we could have existed without this influence on the outside leading us, which is Satan's pride, which is what caused him to fall. I don't know that it wouldn't have been just bliss, that we would have needed to have this wrestling match now that we have.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it's a hard call.
So since Satan made the choice to fall, and just correct me if I'm going out of bounds on this, then the idea that he's going to, misery loves company, he's going to take as many with him as he can. And that's the persistence of him constantly making us feel guilty, making us feel less than, making us be fearful and afraid of not holding up our hand because we'll say the wrong word in class, right? Is that where you see, like, Satan is like, I'm going to be every waking moment from now till the end time, I'm going to be recruiting people to fall.
Well, I don't know. I don't propose to know how Satan thinks. But I would have to say, if you look at the fall, where he says, I want to be equal to God.
Yeah.
I want to be higher than God. This desire for this attention and everything. And then he takes a third of the hosts with him. People who are prideful, and I've had to fight this in my own life, and I know, ministers have just a terrible opportunity at every turn to be victims of this, because people throw applause at them, they throw money at them, they do all these things. So Satan, I look at him and say, if he just truly desired this, his desire is for as many worshipers as he can get to him by anything. And if he has this corruption in him to corrupt you and make you one of his, isn't necessarily, people like to say that he's he's sticking a stick in the eye of God by attacking his creation. I don't know. He's just desirous of this position.
Yeah.
And each one of those people that he gets is just another one of his little straws in his hat.
Yeah.
To make him, and I've seen it myself. When you're leading things and you're out there in front of things, it's this whole thing. I look at David counting the census when he was told not to do it. There's really only one reason you do something like that, is to feel better about yourself. Look at what I've got. I think Satan operates that way. I don't, is it a desire to say, I'm going to show you God, or is it just that pride?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think as you're saying that, my brain is going to, because I think this has exploded in our times of intellect.
Yeah.
Because of the internet, because of our ability to seek and explore knowledge, pre-existing knowledge, and even create new things, right? Just because of the quickness that we can get through data and stuff now. I've jokingly said, but there's probably some truth to this. Now I'm thankful that God made me very average in intellect, because I see so many really smart people.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, like I'll just say the academics of the world of come hell or high water, they're going to try to prove God wrong so that they can prove their thinking right.
I don't that. I don't think it's that they're trying to prove their thinking right. At the bottom of it, all of us struggle with trying to be God.
Yeah, yeah.
So by my intelligence, by my thinking, I know better. That's what Satan really was about.
Yeah.
I mean, when he tempts Adam and Eve, when he's talking to Eve, he's saying, "Oh no, you surely won't die." It's this. That's not the truth. So people get locked around this where they're thinking they're bringing truth, and what it really is about is they want to play God. We all want to play God in our lives,
right?
We all want to, and I'm the chief of it. It's like, this shouldn't happen to me, or this shouldn't be going on in my life, or this affliction. Some things we have no control over. It seems like a cancer or something like that. And in our minds, we play God by saying this shouldn't happen.
Right.
I don't. Just like Job was when he was smacked down by God. You don't understand things.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, I think, is more driven by this inside thing that is what tempted Adam and Eve, or Eve, who then brought Adam along with it, is this desire to be as God.
Yeah.
And it takes all sorts of...
Which gets to that idea of self-creation. Like, I create it myself.
Look what I've done.
Yeah, and I always use that a lot of times in our different shows. I love, I'm not a huge sports follower. I've always loved my sports, but I get into a little bit of football during football season. And, the guy who crosses the goal line, and there's one guy who crosses the goal line and he pumps his chest and he jumps in the stands and he says, "Look how great I am. Look what I did." And there's another guy who crosses the goal line. And as soon as he does, he puts the ball down. He goes and hugs all of his linemen. And then he points to God. He says, "Look how great you are."
Yeah.
And that's the difference, like, of saying, this is a gift. I didn't do any of this, right? I'm using it, but this is a gift.
It took a team.
Yeah, it took a team and took everybody acknowledging. Just quick side note, it is pretty cool to know the number of NFL teams that have a very active chapel and Bible study based. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's very, very active. Indianapolis Colts, the Saints.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of teams out there. Of course, it's going to get a lot of publicity, but in the locker room, a lot of these guys, because at some level, you're going to eat some humble pie, right? At some level, you're going to eat some humble pie. And
if you're going to survive.
Yeah, and they finally go, I need something more than me.
Yeah, you look at the tragedy that happens, with this pride topic and talking about teaching financial peace. I can tell you that's a whole show in itself, how pride affects our finances and everything. I look at those sports stars and you see these tragic stories, how it just mounds. Well, Mike Tyson, I mean, what, $350 million and goes broke? how did they get caught up in this? If
I
you
just
don't-
like to have the chance.
I always
or
laugh.
maybe not.
I used to laugh at people say, "Well, $20 million, I'll get in the ring with." Yeah, you won't get a chance to spend that money when you're drinking your food through a straw for the rest of your life. But it is without that grounding. You see, that pride. Look what I've done, and full of self and everything. It's just tragic to watch how that celebrity. I remember years ago listening to Chuck Swindoll, even when I wasn't a Christian. I don't know why I was drawn to him, but I remember going down the road and he said, for every man that can handle success, there are 1,000 that can't. And in my arrogance, I looked at the radio. I'm in my truck by myself. I said, give me a shot. I don't know what's wrong with everybody else.
I thought you were going to say, and I'm the one who mastered it.
Well, no. But, on the outside, until you've had like something happen like that in your life, like in my 30s, I made a lot of money in a very short period of time, and I was miserable. I was just miserable, and I couldn't understand what was happening. But I remember being on the outside of that thinking, what's the problem here? I think we all think if we just had this or that or the other, we'd be happy, which is, again, a sense of pride. If I could just make my life the way I think it should be, I would be happy.
Yeah.
And then you get there, and a lot of these people get there, and there's just this hollowness, because there's something, the world sees something, is putting something on them that inward they don't really feel. Deep down, it's like when the lights are out, pride, when you're building your life on other things than God and your relationship with God, then the pride is what whispers to you, you're a phony, you should be happy, and, all this other stuff. So, I want to read something real quick. C.S. Lewis is somebody that I've wrestled with. And we were going to talk, I don't know how we're doing on time, but just to kind of set the thing, C.S. Lewis had a quote, and I'm going to read it. Make no mistake, pride is the greatest sin. It is the devil's most effective and destructive tool. Pride is spiritual cancer. It eats up the very possibility of love, contentment, or even common sense. Pride leads to every other vice. It is an anti-God state of mind. It is pride that has been the chief cause of every misery in every nation and family since the world began. And I think he sums it up. It is the greatest sin. The Bible talks about, depending on the translations, you have 58 to 63 references to pride. But as you know, we've been studying Samuel. There's a lot of places that pride isn't actually stated, but it is writ large, and how the person is acting, and you see the destructive nature of it. So God, I used to always wonder, I thought pride was the haunt, walking around, everything like that. I didn't get it for a long time, why there was so much focus on pride in the Bible.
Yeah, well, yeah. and we know personally, but when you're in the process, so the pride doesn't just happen. It is a process where you slowly fool yourself into thinking you're something, whether you slowly or quickly, you made money, right? Or you became great at a sport or whatever. And so it's a process. But, in Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction, haughtiness before the fall, right? And that whole idea, what? Pride goes before destruction?
Yeah.
It was, for me, it was a crash and burn with anxiety.
Yeah.
To know that everything that I was trying was not working.
Yeah.
And being so broken, crying and wanting to be done with life. So, here I was just upscale climbing this mountain and thinking I was all that at some level, thinking I was good. And, but the more I did, the worse I was feeling, the more anxious I was getting. Because I was holding a lot of balls up in the air, right?
Yeah.
Like I was, seriously, during that time, I was getting my master's. I was a swim coach, which we were doing morning swim coaching. I was a teacher. We had just bought a house, and Linda was pregnant with our son, Nick.
Wow. Just a little going on.
Yeah. Well, so you used to be able to take those tests, like here's how you can tell if you've got these events going on in your life, they get a certain stress value measurement, and I would just be off the charts. And because I was off the charts, I'd go, and I'm doing just fine. See how good I am?
Yeah, see everything I got going on.
Yeah, and so that was that. I'm juggling all those balls, and when I started to drop a couple of them, I became overwhelmed. And when I fell, it wasn't a matter of just take a break that day. Literally, I had a doctor tell me, you just need to take a few days off and rest. And that happened several times after being in the ER, Yeah. And it wasn't working because I think I literally had caused damage to my biological brain. Right?
There's a cycle. Certain amounts of this is external, but then at certain points, the chemical reactions in the body start to really escalate.
And so it was a 2-year falling off of a cliff. And so that was the pride buildup, and then the humility or the humble journey back, which anyone who goes through that, you and I would both say, I never want to go through it again. I don't want to relive those 2 years.
No.
But I'd never change them out.
You wouldn't
either.
Trade it.
Yeah, because they have taught me a little bit about pride and how I handled or mishandled it. They've taught me a little bit about it's better to fall to your knees faster, sooner rather than later. And I still haven't mastered any of these things, right? But it's that, and so any of you guys
I wasn't saying that so fast.
No,
you haven't.
You
Merle.
jumped on that one quickly.
That was a general statement.
But, you guys out there listening, hopefully you're picking up some of this, that there's not a man, and I get to work with men who've made it in finances and business, who've made it in sports and fatherhood. I get to work with these guys, but I also get to see their other part of their journey. Usually by the time they're coming in to see me, they're usually on that fall. That's why they walked into the door to see me. And I think that's why, there's a heart in me that goes, oh, man, but I'm glad you're falling.
Yeah, you want to try to snatch somebody out of that, but and there's a certain amount that you play a role in helping people navigate out of that.
Right.
But like you said, some of the worst things that happened to me ended up being the best. I mean, I'm sober because, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details. Something was said after a particular night. Something was said to me by somebody that I realized the full measure of what I was. It was so devastating to me personally, to who I thought I was. My knees buckled, and I realized you have become all that you despise.
Yeah,
that it was that, and it was crushing, but it was the fuel that helped me not to go back to that. Now, I struggled after that, and I told you being sober for years when I really got into trouble. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, you're going to, not this show, but you have to explain to me like dry drunk and all that.
Yeah, we can get into that.
Those are different kind of things that are interesting.
What even carried me, that kept me going, was that of being, and then when I lost all that money I talked about, Megan, it took me a year. I mean, I took to the couch, and I'm not proud of this. I'm sitting around in my underwear. I was working out of my house. I'm sitting around in my underwear.
And this is way before COVID.
Way before COVID, and I've got these little tuna cans that I turned into Chia Pets. I became a chain smoker. Oh. Did I ever tell you this? I don't know.
I did know that you smoked, yeah.
Well, I smoked occasionally before that, but I got up and this Wall Street Journal article broke, and I get a call from a broker. Did you see what happened? I thought I'd made a bunch more money, because I'd made a bunch the day before. He said, "It's over, Carl." And this article broke. Nobody saw it coming, and it's just bottom. And I was just arrogant.
What year was that?
1995, something like that. 95, 96 is when all this transition. So... And I was so full of myself. I was so confident, arrogant. I didn't even have a stop loss. I was playing without a net. I went from investing in the market for years to gamble. I made a big gamble is what I did. But anyway, I got up, and the next day I got up and I want to smoke. So I pick up a pack of cigarettes. By noon, I'm back for another pack. I started off 2 packs a day. I get to 4.
Wow.
And I'm sitting on the couch trying to figure out why I wasn't happy having money and why I definitely wasn't happy not having any money. But I turned these tuna cans into Chia Pets. At the end of the day, I would literally sit and smoke like this and stick them. They would get so full that then the butts would stick straight up. It
Oh,
looked
wow.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
And it took a year until one day I'm reading in the Message, and I can't even tell you what the proverb or psalm was. I don't remember. But I remember I was walking with the book, and the dam broke. That passage, and I got to the bed, and I was next to the bed, and I don't know, guys, if you ever have this happen in your life, it's happened to me a few times. I literally thought I was going to die. This wail was coming out of me, because everything I ever thought in my life, if I just had money, because I always had everybody had a good time around me. I wanted people to like me, and money was the way I was going to prove that I was worth, that I had worth, that I was good, that I was something. So my whole identity was wrapped up in that. And when that broke, I literally died. Paul talks about we have to die to self, and that's how we're going to get around pride. Eventually we get to how we fix the problem.
Yeah.
But it just it took a year.
Yeah.
A year of just being a miserable wretch, of sitting on the couch. That's a pretty picture. I looked better then, I want to tell you that. I wasn't 63.
I don't know. The whole underwear thing, I can't unsee that now. With Chia Pets.
Cigarette Chia Pets. Dirty, and I dump them out. It was terrible. It was disgusting. But,
well, on that note, guys, let's close this up, because we're going to come back and continue some of our talk about, like, okay, so what are some of the anecdotes, right? Yeah. And I think one of the things, maybe, Carl, too, is how do I know that I'm falling into the throes of this? Because I think, when you're in the middle, you don't really get it. You don't really think that you're falling into this stuff. In fact, you'll argue that you aren't, which is part of the deal, right? So, but there's a lot of different tentacles that are going to come out of this. So anyway, I want to thank you for our first show together. I've enjoyed it like I do all of our talks, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Again, we want to thank our sponsors. We want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions, Quality Auto Mart, and 4Speed on 50 Diner. I want to thank all of our listeners out there. Carl, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm almost always in study groups in the last decade. I want to say a quick prayer, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's just this. Hey, Lord, first, to thank you for this opportunity. But as I always like to pray, if I've said anything here that is not honoring you, that is in error, that is doctrinally unsound, that might lead somebody astray, please just erase it from their minds. Don't give it any power. I just want to acknowledge, too, the great thing that Merle is doing here, reaching out to guys and people, and the influence that he and his wife both have been, and just ask that you keep them strong, because I know that's not an easy thing. But we thank you for this opportunity, and we ask all this in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Go out there and be a strong dad. Strong Dads wants to thank Quality Auto Mart and Service for being a proud sponsor of the Strong Dads podcast. Started in 1985 and going strong for all these years. Recently, Quality Auto Mart has transitioned from owners of Mark and Nancy Repke to longtime employee Fred and Lorraine Venus. For all your automotive needs and golf cart needs, check out Quality Auto Mart, located across from Indian Lakes on Highway 46 outside of Batesville, Indiana. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.